Individualized planning centered around a student happens many times for our children with disabilities during middle school and high school, in IEP meetings, transition planning, and during pre-employment transition planning. These student-centered plans consider unique interests, strengths, and needs of the student. Ideally, when we're working on a student-centered plan, we ask the question, what's important to the person, not just for the person? They involve looking at the supports that need to be in place to enhance success and build on a person's strengths and interests. The key is that the activities are chosen by and are meaningful to the student. And the environment and the informal and formal supports are in place for success for our students. Next slide.
Sorry, I'm trying to advance the slide and it is, there we go. Thank you.
Okay, good. It's good we're working these things out. For inclusive higher education, a student-directed or person-centered plan is considered best practice. The planning process is unique to the university or college, but at its core are opportunities for self-determination. And the examples that are here, a student-directed plan, are an example of how a university might start and touch base with the goals of the plan. And then next slide are some of the core opportunities for self-determination in inclusive higher education when making a person-centered, student-centered plan. This is where a student gets to make their own choices about their courses, their career development and opportunities, their campus activities, their social groups, social activities that they want to participate in, their housing, and peer mentors and natural supports. At the core of all these decisions is the student making choices themselves. So now I'm going to introduce you Mark Winters, and he is the Executive Director of Operations at Beacon Specialized Living, Minnesota, and is a person-centered planning facilitator and trainer. His work focuses on sharing and integrating person-centered philosophy, thinking, and actions into all aspects of his work and within the lives of the people he supports. Mark has worked as a consultant and trainer for over 15 years and has been supporting people for over 25. He has a BA in organizational behavior and brings broad experience to the work of fostering dreams, finding ways to turn possibilities into reality, identifying milestones toward valued roles within communities, and supporting full and meaningful lives. And Mark is going to take us on a deeper dive into the process of person-centered planning. Thank you, Mark, for being here.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys all for coming. I wanted to start, I don't know how to follow that introduction. That was wonderful. Thank you. Really, the time that I want to spend today with you guys and going through this slide presentation is based on my experience and over the years of working with people to find their dreams and to work towards their goals. And I want to start with a short reflection that should give us, I think, a place for us to sort of hold this space today. So as I read this, just think about this, about this and how it may correlate or connect with your work and your support for the folks that we care about. In the eye of the hurricane, the sky is blue and birds can fly there without suffering harm. The eye of the hurricane is in the very middle of destructive power, and that power is always near, surrounding that blue beauty and threatening to invade it. In a world of moral hurricanes, some people can and do carve out rather large ethical spaces. In a natural world and a social world swirling in cruelty and love, we can make room. We who are not pure ethical beings can push away the choking circle of brute force that is around and within us. We may not be able to push it far away, but when we have made as much room as we can, we may know a blue space that the storm does not know. When I reflect on that, I think about the work that we do, what it brings to my mind is the fact that we're all super busy. We all have crisis. We all have things happening in our lives. We all have really busy jobs, and that is the hurricane that swirls around us all the time. And we sometimes have to just press pause and find and create that space. And that, to me, that's what facilitation is all about, is finding that space where we can have open and honest conversation, where we can do a really good job of listening to the people that we care about and the people that we support, and to help them reach those milestones, to help them reach for those dreams that they have. I hope this is helpful for you guys to just kind of create a starting point for us today. So person-centered planning facilitation. Quickly here in talking about what exactly is it, right? What is facilitating a plan? Well, it's more than a checkbox on a form. I'll say this several times over today in different ways. There are places where person-centered planning and facilitation of a plan may show up in a system. But our focus as planners, our focus in supporting people to go through the planning process is not and should not be to check a box on a form and say that one was done, right? It is also bigger than a single process. It's more than just meeting once or twice. It is a living, breathing, ongoing process for the person. There have been times when just the phrase person-centered planning has become very, very much jargon, right? I recall being in a learning community training with a county case manager, and she said to me, well, I write person-centered plans every day. And long story short, what came out of that conversation was you complete county paperwork in a person-centered way every single day, but you don't do person-centered plans every day, right? There's a big difference between that. So we need to be careful how we use this language. It can be too easy to just kind of toss out the term person-centered or person-centered planning or student-centered and not pay attention to the focus that we need to have on what that really means and what it really means for the person. And true and good planning really is dependent upon many things, not just the facilitator, not just the person like me who's trained to come in and facilitate that process and be a part of it for a short period of time. It's about the development of a circle of supports and about creating a situation where that ongoing support can be fostered. So we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. So I mentioned this, and the question that I have is, what is this? What is this picture you see, right? Is that a Band-Aid? That's what I call it. I call it a Band-Aid. But that's a brand name, right? I could go buy a box of these at the grocery store, and the box will say adhesive bandage. Person-centered planning is not a catch-all phrase. We need to be careful not to attach it to everything we talk about and everything we do and all the paperwork that we fill out and all of the experiences that we have. It's less about the label and more about what we're actually doing and how we're actually supporting people. So quite often, there's this concept that we've tossed around, and this has become sort of the norm in conversations between facilitators and in stakeholder work groups, is that there's kind of a difference between what is the big P and what is a little p, in that there's the overall plan for somebody, and then there's the planning, the big P being the overall care plan and the process that we go through to make sure that we're meeting somebody's needs and that we're supporting them in the ways that they need to be supported and want to be supported from an overall care perspective. And then there's maybe the person-centered plan facilitation, which is a small part of that, right? It is what can be and is held to provide that guidance and to give the direction and to foster those conversations and relationships to move the lives of the person forward, right? To help that person achieve those milestones that they want to meet along the way. So I just wanted to pause for a quick second here and ask you guys. So, after listening to these first few slides and kind of starting this conversation, how does that feel for you as a parent, as a stakeholder, as an educator? What are the thoughts that are bubbling up for you right now? Go ahead and open your mics and share a little bit here. Do people have the ability to open their mics? I'm sorry.
Yes, I do. Okay. I'll start out because I just always have things bubbling up constantly. It really makes me think about all the different plans as a parent that I'm involved in as a participant, and how can I steer these planning processes, especially in IEP meetings, but also as we're planning for transition to be very real, see our family as a whole part of my daughter's experience, and that it's not just checking a box is what I'm trying to say. How do I steer it away from not being a checking a box process?
Yeah, as a facilitator, I find myself in a unique role in that sometimes in those conversations, I have the ability to maybe say something that people are thinking that they might not be comfortable saying in those moments. We try really, really hard to focus on holding a non-judgmental space where open and honest conversation can happen at all times, where it's okay to disagree and to have those things come to the surface. But for me as a facilitator, I sometimes can step in and go, okay, well, can I pause us for a second? Because we're not really listening to the person, right? Or why don't, instead of asking each other this question, why don't we ask them, right? Why don't we stop talking and do a little bit more listening? And there are ways to go about those conversations and to foster that, and by leading by example then spreads through the group, right? And that helps to make those conversations more robust and more healthy and quite frankly have better results, right? So all you can do is try. It's okay as a parent to speak up and say, here's what I think is important. But it's also important to say and great to say, maybe I'm going to hold on to that for just a second and ask everybody to listen to what my daughter or my son thinks is important. Anybody else?
This is Ryan. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm our employment coordinator for the Disability Services Division at DHS. But I often for me, a lot of the times, what was coming to my head with a lot of this discussion is obviously working in, DSD and at DHS, we're big systems and there's a lot of rules and hoops and that sort of stuff. And just trying to think we in person-centeredness and that general is something that's really important to the division. It comes across a lot in the language, it's really important. But then in my work, when I'm trying to do it, thinking about, hey, as we're grappling this things, how do I keep that perspective in my head, even when navigating things like policies, there's you have these competing priorities and how do you, and I don't know if it's the right way to look at it, but a shorthand that always comes is thinking it from the perspective of all right, what about the person in all of this? Like how is this impacting them, and like, what are they seeing and what are they needing, and how does that, and trying to get away from like, what does the system need or whatever. But that's one part, sorry, just to reflect a little bit, but that's one part I really struggle with when thinking about person-centeredness, and that, Band-Aid versus adhesive bandage, am I keeping the terms right in my head, is like really trying to be able to apply that and maintain that perspective in my work. And it can get really tough sometimes in looking at all these different things, but trying to be kind of like true to that perspective.
Awesome. That was great. Thank you very much for sharing. That's your hurricane, right? That's your hurricane. You're trying to find that blue space, right? That's exactly why we started with that reflection. And it takes discipline to do that. It takes practice, right? Every day I find times when I think, okay, I'm doing something within a system. I'm doing something, and I'm not saying that, and while we're not saying that that stuff is not important. We know we have to do that. We know that all of those pieces have to fit. It's not about taking anything away from those processes and those system required items. It's about saying, we know those things can happen and do need to happen and will happen, but how am I going to do that? How am I going to make sure that ultimately, yes, someone is going to check a box somewhere, someone is going to have a form in a file, someone is going to say, yes, this happened. And that's only one part of it. The most important part is what did that plan actually hold? And did it make a difference for the person, right? It takes discipline and it takes work. I've been doing it for years and I still work at it. So thank you very much for sharing that. Okay, I'm gonna move on. So facilitation of a plan. What is that, right? What is the facilitation of a person-centered plan? Well, first off, it's holding space. It's holding space for conversation. It's sharing information, and it's working through a chosen process and the use of different tools to help a person to communicate those things that are most important to them and create balance between that and what's important for them. It's generating momentum and change, right? People are looking for something different, something new. We all have dreams. We all have goals, small, large, they're all there, right? A facilitation of a specific person-centered plan is designed around generating the momentum to reach those things, right? Nike has a great tagline, and it's just do it. I can't imagine what else Nike could use as it's so ingrained, I think, in society. But if we think about that, we could just sit around and talk about things, and that'd be great. We could have meetings, and we could have great conversations, and we could walk away from those meetings and go right back to life the way it was. And that's just getting together and talking. How do we actually generate that momentum and then take that momentum and make it work? Make it work for us, make it work for the person, right? And it is supporting dedicated teams to make those actions happen, to actually create those opportunities. Okay. As a facilitator, right, and in planning, there are things that we hold, as tenants, things that we depend on and things that we count on. And one of them is this phrase, and that is all means all. Unique to the situation of a person in higher education or moving on in their life with concerns to education, we need to recognize and try very hard to recognize that college is a unique experience for everybody, and it is a very diverse group. So person-centered planning is not focused on any particular individual, any particular disability, any particular ethnicity, any particular cultural background. It is all means all. Planning can work for everybody. actually this afternoon, I was meeting a person for the first time and doing some discovery and learning about them because I'm going to be doing some facilitation with him. And as his mom started talking, she said, well, I think I want to do one of these plans for myself too. And I'm like, yep, certainly it can work for you too. Like, let's talk about that. It can work and does work for all of us. We need to recognize that everybody is a unique individual and they all come from different backgrounds. So we pay respect to the phrase all means all and recognize that that means all ethnicities, socioeconomic status, all cultures, people that come from maybe situations where there's different family dynamics, and honoring that place that a person comes from and meeting a person where they're at as foundational. Excuse me. As facilitators, we depend on certain things. Like for a plan to be successful, we depend on connections between people, right? As a team, and holding ourselves to a higher standard of support. Recognizing that in these conversations, there's going to be emerging opportunities, and we are tasked with exploring the possibilities. What can be is a question that we are always holding for ourselves. What can be? There are rules that that are held by the community of improvisational acting troops. And one of them is a rule that we have hung on to and used within our training as person-centered planning facilitators, and that is the rule of yes and. If in a improv troupe, someone is standing on stage and they point at the crowd and they say, okay, where am I? And someone yells, you're in outer space. The person accepts that and says, okay, yes, I'm in outer space. And what am I eating? And someone hollers something out. What they don't do is go, yeah, no, I don't want to be in outer space, right? They hold themselves accountable to accepting what is offered and then building on that. It is yes, and what can be next. And we hold ourselves to that in these conversations as well. When someone says, I want to do this, I want to be successful at that, I want to learn how to blank, we don't shut them down. We say, yes, and how can we help? Yes, and what, tell me more about that, right? It is about exploring those opportunities and letting those conversations bring emergence to those new ideas. Dedicated supporters, a team, a group of people that are there, that are part of that person's life, both natural and paid supports, to help that person to actually be able to accomplish whatever those milestones are that they want to meet. Committing the resources that are necessary to make it happen. That might mean authorizing a new service. That might mean looking at different ways to connect with people in the community. That might mean, going to a counselor's office and having a conversation about, what's happening, at that school and what are the opportunities to explore those new or different ideas. That might be talking to a resident supervisor in a dorm about a living situation, right? It is for us about recognizing what needs to happen and then doing what we can to commit the resources that are necessary to support that goal that the person has. And then ongoing support, right? Ongoing support of that control and choice. Again, more than just the planning process, which is a small part. It is what happens afterwards. Right? What happens after we have done this thing, this little p, this facilitation of a plan? What happens next? How do we follow through, right? It's a positive and collaborative experience. It provides a meaningful vision for the future, and the practical actions to actually get to that future, right? It is gathering and sharing of information. It is recording and scribing that in a way that works for the person. I do graphic facilitation myself, create panels and artistic work that help people to remember those conversations that they had and those things that are important. Other people have created PowerPoint presentations. Other people have recorded the conversations. It really is about having something that we can put in place and keep in place to help the team and the person remember what those discussions are. So that it's more than just getting together one time and talking. It's an ongoing process, and we can recall what we talked about last time and then build on it. More of the yes and, right? And fostering that ongoing support. So in the upcoming slides, we're going to talk about these three sort of items, these three sections, if you will. We'll talk a little bit about what the difference is between a want to and a need to plan, and some of the emerging themes that the community of facilitators have been experiencing as far as helping people to go through the planning process. And then we're going to talk about making that process, when it happens, real with the person. So want to versus need to planning, right? When is a good time for planning, and who decides, right? And we might ask ourselves the question, if not now, then when? And there are really sort of three times when a person-centered plan or the facilitation of a plan is happening. And that is when the person says it, I want to plan. This is something I want to do. It's driven and motivated by themselves. Sometimes it's the process, right? Sometimes there's a systemic process that's in place where it says, okay, as part of this, in order to be a part of this, educational experience, in order to move in here, in order to receive these supports, we have to do some person-centered planning. And sometimes it's driven by the support. Maybe it's a family member, right? Maybe it's someone that is involved in the education process for the person. Maybe it's a service provider, and they say, right now a plan might be helpful because we're seeking that direction, and maybe there's a juxtaposition between what some people are saying and others, and we need to gather together to do some really good listening and focus on what the person wants rather than what I want as a provider, what the system needs, et cetera, if that makes sense. Sorry, guys. So facilitation happens for lots and lots of different reasons. It was interesting to me because I had this great big list of the reasons why facilitation happens, focusing on traditional supports here in Minnesota. And I had to go through this and kind of change it and think about it from an education perspective. There's a lot more diverse items that have been added to this list specific to this situation. So really, one of the items that is not unique and fits every single person's situation is that facilitation of a person-centered plan happens for better listening and to promote choice, so that we do a good job of understanding what a person is telling us they want and what they need, and that choice. What do you want from your college experience? Right? How do we ask that question? How do we break that question down and build upon the answers to those smaller or more drilled down focused questions that can give us the ultimate answer, right? What do you want from your college experience? I wish someone would have asked me that when I started college. I can guarantee it, right? I'm sure some of you probably feel the same way. How many people switch majors a year in, halfway through, right? It happens. So it's about mapping things out. Sometimes it's about saying, okay, what do I want my schedule to be? What do I want my routine to look like? Are there certain things that I need to look at? What are my goals for school? Maybe it's what are my goals for school this year? Or what are my goals for this fall when I start? Right? Sometimes it's a 4-year plan. Sometimes it's just a couple months. That again is why we talk so much about the ongoing process. That if we're truly after a good understanding of what a person's college experience could be and what they want from their college experience, why would we stop at, what do you want this fall to look like when you move in your dorm? We got to be able to say, okay, we've tackled that. Now what's next? Right? That the process continues. It's about helping a person to identify what activities can be meaningful for them, helping them to connect with the supports that are there for them in that community, right? Their peers, their roommates, advisors, professors, professionals, family members, whoever it is, right? How do we foster those connections? It's about friendships sometimes, right? Somebody might say, I've got all this stuff figured out, but the one thing that's really, really bugging me is when I start school, how am I going to make friends? I want to have friends. And it's about identifying strengths and building on them. I think hearkening back to that question that I asked is how many people switch majors. Maybe it's, what do I want my major to be? What am I good at? What do I want to try to do? What do I want to become, right? How do I want to learn? How do I want to grow? What are the skills that I have now that I can build on? So some emerging themes. I've been facilitating person-centered planning since 2007. I've been paying pretty close attention to these trends since about 2011. So maybe it's more than a trend now. I guess I could probably say these are pretty much fact. And that is ineffective planning. When a plan really works, that when we engage in those conversations, that we listen to understand rather than listening to respond. I try really hard to do this, and I'm going to raise my hand and say I'm not super good at it when I'm having conversations with my kids and sometimes my wife. Shame on me. But when someone is having a conversation with me, it takes focus and it takes determination and it takes discipline to actually accept what they're saying to me and not be formulating how I'm going to respond. Because if I spend my time formulating how I'm going to respond, I lose what they're telling me. It becomes static and I can miss the message. So this is really, really important, right? Effective planning holds a space where people listen to understand rather than listening to formulate a response, where teams believe in the possibilities, where dignity of risk and dignity of choice is absolutely present, where it is fostered. We don't, again, back to the yes and, right? We don't say, well, no, that's never going to work. It's okay. Every life lesson that I've learned because I fell down and I got back up. I learned what it was like to fall. I learned what it was like to make a mistake. And we quite often put ourselves in a position to be the protector and shelter and put a bubble around the person and say, oh, that's not a possibility because what if this happens or what if that happens? Effective planning holds a space where those conversations change. They change to, okay, if this is what the person wants, how do we make that happen? And how do we support them to keep them safe while this is happening, right? There's follow through. Effective planning has follow through. Committed teams that follow through on the things that they are set to task in doing. Where facilitators lead through example by helping people to understand that we are open to change and that we are open to those conversations. Where planning happens at a time that works for the person, it is really, really difficult to facilitate a plan when the person is not fully invested in wanting it to happen for themselves. If somebody feels like they have to plan because someone said they have to plan, it's a very different experience than when someone comes to me and says, I want to plan. I want people to listen to me. I want to tell people what I want in my life. Right? And where the support is ongoing. Successful plans have ongoing support. We keep the process moving. We meet again. We plan again. We keep building. Ineffective planning, not to say that this happens all the time, but there are times when planning becomes difficult and it is not as effective as it could be. And these are the reasons why. When it's influenced by choice, right? Where we are, sorry, when there is influence of the choice, where we are closed off to the perceived limits that person might have. This goes back to the previous slide and what I was saying. If we oh, that's never going to work, or we tried that before, 5 years ago, and nobody wants to try that again because it's too scary. Or, well, you know what? People grow and people learn, and maybe last time when it didn't work, we can identify some reasons why it didn't work, and we can build some supports in this time to make it more successful, right? It's yes, and. So when we are closed off, closed-minded, and are trying to influence the choice, that makes the plan ineffective. When one issue takes over, that sometimes happens, where if a member of the team, a member of the circle of supports, a member of that person's network is very, very focused on one particular item, that can make it difficult to listen to the rest of a person's ideas, right? Where planning also can be ineffective is when it's simply a process component, right? We just have to plan. It just needs to be, we have to do A, we have to do B, we have to do a plan, and then we can do C and D and E and F, right? If it is simply driven by the process and the people that are involved in the planning, including the person, are viewing it as something that just needs to happen, then being invested in that process is a really, really difficult thing to do. So we have to dedicate ourselves to that. If we try to do them fast in a time crunch, try to get them done in a certain amount of time, planning takes time. As a facilitator, I have to learn about the person. I got to spend time with that person. They have to spend time with me. I want them to be comfortable with me so that when we're having those conversations and I'm asking those questions, they don't feel like they don't know who I am. It's a difficult situation to meet somebody and to step into the role of facilitating a plan and to be working with them and asking them questions that are sometimes very intimate and very personal about their choices and about what they want in their life. And that's a hard thing to do with someone that you are not comfortable with, that you don't know at that level. I would never think to ask any of you questions about your relationship status, right? We would have to be pretty close friends for us to have that conversation, right? So why would I treat a person that I'm working with to help facilitate a plan any differently? They need to be comfortable with the situation and comfortable with their facilitator. So rushing through it tends to make a plan ineffective. The people that are involved then simply feel like you're going through the motions rather than really listening to the person. And then not following through. What we do not want to do is open the door to hope and then shut it in someone's face. So creating that vision turns into supporting a new reality. When a process is complete, when we're done with the initial facilitation of a person-centered plan, when we have that first meeting is over and we've got our graphic and we've had those conversations, then what? When the process is at that stage, what do we seek to have? We seek to have a deeper understanding of that person as a unique individual, really understanding, meeting a person where they're at and understanding what they want and what they need. Right? Plans produce possibilities. What are the options? What can be next? What will we be working on? Right? It evokes the courage to act. That people leave that planning process motivated to support the individual, that the person is motivated for what can happen next in their life, and that collaboratively we're taking that momentum and we are moving forward with it, right? That we have left that part of the planning process with agreements and expectations of ourselves, all of them aimed at the success and the milestones that that person has identified. And that we create new expectations for ourselves. Sometimes we have to stop and go, you know, I wasn't thinking about it this way. And now that we've had that conversation, I can respect what that person is saying. I understand what they're communicating, and I'm going to do what I can to help them to support that goal that they have. Excuse me. That sometimes means that we have to stretch. We have to stretch past our comfort level. So what can we do? In any planning process, the person gets to decide and determine who they want to be present at that session. That might mean that there are key individuals that are part of the support that might not be at that particular planning session or that particular meeting or part of a particular conversation. So we have to share that information. We share it with educators and we share it with key individuals so that everybody that is a part of that person's network, everybody that is a part of that person's support understands what the goal is. Right? So sharing information is important. Holding each other accountable to the action that we identify, right? If I say, Mary, here's what I'm going to help with, I'm going to make sure that I get the following information and send it to you and Jean so that you guys can make a decision. If I don't send that information, I'm holding up the process. And Mary has to be comfortable enough to say, hey, Mark, knock, knock, knock. You said you were going to do this. Have you done it yet? I'm waiting for it, right? And me as the person who has agreed to respond and agreed to support have to keep that mindset that if I don't do this, then I'm holding that person back. And that might mean that I have to stretch past my comfort level and do something that's a little bit uncomfortable. It might mean that I have to have a conversation with someone that I've never met. It might mean that I have to ask somebody at a school or in a dorm. I might have to ask a professor. I might have to ask somebody something that is a little bit uncomfortable. Okay, that's fine, because what I'm after is success for that person, right? I am going to ask that question because I'm seeking an answer to the question as what are the possibilities? Ongoing connections and building and maintaining those ongoing connections, recognizing that things change and that new people and new connections happen, and fostering those new members of a person's support network, professionally and socially, natural supports as they appear. And natural supports are sometimes very, very difficult to recognize, however, are super, super effective. Natural supports, we all have them. We all experience that naturally in our lives. We are in a different situation than someone living with an intellectual or developmental disability who is trying to move forward with their life and can be hindered by the system and can be hindered by society, right? So how do we foster those natural supports and put people in positions, support people to be in positions where they can meet people that have similar interests, that enjoy the same activities, that spend time in the same spaces, so that those connections are natural and those friendships and relationships can develop. Everybody needs friends to help them out, right? And being adaptable to change. This is that question that I asked before, right? How many of us switch majors? We know that in the college experience, people change their minds a lot. Somebody might move into a dorm and then decide 6 months in, I don't like the dorm life. I'd rather live in an apartment of my own. I don't want a roommate. Or I met a bunch of friends and they've asked me to join the frat. Right? People change their minds. Things change. I took this class and it really made me start to explore these other ideas, and I want to take these other new classes instead of the ones that I originally planned for. So we have to be able to adapt and support those changes and those choices as they happen. And we know there's going to be a lot of them. As far as ongoing supports, and this image is very, very intentional, right? When I learned how to ride a bike, my father held the seat until it was time to let go of that seat. So we check in as part of the process with facilitation. The follow-up includes checking in, and in an education situation, right, in this environment, these ongoing supports are that much more important, that we consistently on a regular basis and routine, we check in and we follow up. So what do those check-ins look like? That's sharing the success stories and understanding what things have gone well for the person, right? It is using a tool like what's working and what's not to identify those items, right? What is right for the last couple of months or for the last month or however, whatever the time period is, what has been working for you and what has not been working for you, right? That's a great tool to use to help us understand what direction we can go and maybe recognize some of the things that we can do to help a person be more successful, right? Recognizing for ourselves or asking the person, how can we be better for you? What can we do to help more, right? And then balancing the choice, right? Coursework and classes with other activities. I got a couple of college buddies that went to college for one reason, and it wasn't education. Right? It was parties and kegs. Those were friends of mine in high school that didn't have a lot of balance, right? So what do we do? In our opportunity to support a person in their educational life, in that situation, to say, how are you balancing the things that you want to do for fun, the places you want to go, the friendships you want to have, and the necessary coursework, the classes, the activities that you've assigned yourself onto, the things that you need to do to be successful in school, right? Use of scheduling tools and routines. I apologize, I just recognized that typo there. And then the way that I started this slide, also finishing this slide with the same, and that is letting go when necessary. Right? We have to be able to say, okay, right now, this person is doing just fine and they don't need my support because we've helped them along the way and they've learned and taken those steps, and now they don't need that. I don't have to be there. I can let go of the seat because he's pedaling, right? So in planning, we hold ourselves accountable to one role, and we try very, very hard before leaving any planning session to say, who is the champion going to be? To identify that person that can be part of that follow through, that can hold others accountable and hold themselves accountable to those identified action steps. Right? So I just wanted to talk quickly about the role of that champion, right? It's about supporting the connections that happen, the connections that emerge, and the connections that are made as part of the planning process. When we identify, okay, person A needs to go speak to person B, the champion needs to be the one to make sure that person A and person B actually had that conversation. And if we don't know who person B is, and the champion then can step in and say, okay, let's figure that out. Who is person B? Where are they? Let me bridge the gap, right? Let me help to sort of push the buttons I need to push and make sure that we've set it up for success. for all of us, not just the champion. The follow through and the direction of a plan holds that we need to keep the promises that we make. Again, we don't open doors to hope to then shut them. That if we dedicate ourselves and tell a person we're going to support them and help them, that we actually follow through and do it. And that as the direction changes, as the plan grows, we reach out, we adapt, and we try again, and we keep building and keep moving forward. So planning in a nutshell. And what I want to do is close with John O'Brien's reflection on that blue space poem that we started with today. A social field, blue space, a social field where we can turn our attention to creativity, to improving our living answers to the moral questions whose practical answers determine how people with developmental disabilities show up in our communities. So the last slide here is resources. The Hans Meisner, Blue Space, Creating Blue Space Reflection, Moving Past the Limits of Person-Centered Planning are both really good resources that are available on inclusion.com, Inclusion Press. There's going to be some resources that are shared with you guys after the time today, including this teaching, including supporting college students with intellectual disabilities. So here's a reference for that. And then my information is on here as well. Thank you guys for including me today and letting me be a part of your story for a little while. Thank you very, very much. We'll, of course, probably have some questions, and I will open it back up to you all. Thank you guys very much. Should I stop sharing my screen now?
Can everyone see the poll? I'm guessing, yeah. Oh, good.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. And please stay if you can, because we'll have some discussion time. Thank you, Mark. And I'm sure everybody has a lot of things bubbling up from your presentation. And if you can't stay, thanks for coming, and we'll be in touch about some upcoming events. There, in the last email, there was a reminder about Think College webinar coming up. So.
Okay. I think the poll is completed, it looks like.
Great.
And
Oh, and there's a slide with the reminders of the upcoming.
the Think College webinars.
Yeah, thanks.
Mhm. Great. Well, if anyone, while Mark is here, if anyone has some questions or thoughts, this is a great opportunity to ask your questions.
I have a question, Mark. What is the, do you have sort of an idea of an ideal number of people to be at a person-centered planning event or not? Is it, I mean, you wouldn't want too many, right? Or too few, I suppose.
Okay, so this is a question that I have had before, and I love it because Mary is here. When we helped with Jean's planning, there were what, 20 people there? Somewhere around 20. Mary, is that correct?
Maybe the first one, we had good representation of all sorts of people that were part of her life that she wanted to have there.
I've actually done planning where the person has said, I don't want anybody there. I just want to be with you guys. So it was myself and a co-facilitator and the person. So I don't know if ideal is the right word, because ideal is relative to the person's experience, right? It's about, what does this person want? Who do they want to invite? Who is important? And I tell people all the time, it honestly, it doesn't matter to me who's there. What matters to me is that the people that are there matter to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are a lot of times when there are people who feel like they need to be there and the person simply doesn't want to invite them. I mean, and if you think about an experience where a person might say something like, one of my goals is to be my own legal representative when I turn 18. And guess what? I don't want to invite my legal rep. I don't want to invite my mom or my dad or my parents, right? I want to talk about my life and me being my own legal representative without having that person present, right? I've worked with people who have said, I want a new case manager, or I want to, live in a new home. I want a new service provider. I want, and that might mean that they don't want that current person who's in that role to be part of it. So there are other times when people invite a person and you realize the deep connection that they have to that natural support and that person, and you get just a few minutes into the plan and you realize, like, now I know exactly why this person was invited, right? Because they are such an important part of this person's life. I can't imagine planning without inviting this person. So it really is unique to each person and who they want to be, a part of that conversation.
Thanks. That's helpful. I like the way that you tied it into education throughout, because I know that probably isn't always the focus for your work with people.
It's interesting because that is a direction that I've actually wanted to go. It was probably 3 years ago now. I did my first planning facilitation with a young man who was transitioning from second grade to third grade. And that meant in his school, that meant a different wing and a new teacher and a new set of classmates, and being in a mainstream room instead of a room that was for, I hate labels, special students, right? Like, everything was changing about his school world. It meant different lunch times. It meant different recess and break times. It meant different classes. It meant having the experience of not having one teacher all day, but having several teachers throughout the day for the different courses. It meant moving from one classroom to another, right? Halfway through the day. There was all kinds of stuff that had a huge effect on his life. And that was the first time that was my first soiree into being involved in that side of planning. And it was so cool. It was so powerful. It was I think life-changing would be maybe an extreme way to say it, but truly, as far as professional life, it was really, really great. I think the other part that was hard with that situation was the scheduling piece, because the professionals that were involved have very strict and regimented schedules, right? I have to be in this class from this hour to this hour. I have to be in this room. I only have a half hour here in between these two places I have to be. I have an IEP meeting at this time, and then another one that starts, at another time, and there's a short, so planning for 2.5 hours was not possible. We had to meet a whole bunch of times, right, to make it fit and work for the person. So it's interesting.
Mark, I was wondering if you could share a little bit about I think you called it the exploratory process, like before you have the actual meeting, how you get to know the person.
Yeah. We call that discovery.
Okay.
No, it's not a hardened term, but that's what we call it. And it really is. I did it today, actually. I did it at 1 o'clock today before the meeting. So this is a great question. It's making me think of the conversations that we had today. And really, the first thing is, for me, I think my focus is not walking into the room with a tablet of paper and a pen, but just saying hi, right? I'm not showing up and handing people my business card and, using technical jargon or acronyms to explain the work I do. I don't walk in and say, hi, my name is Mark Winters. I'm a person-centered planning facilitator. I'm from Beacon Special Ed. I say, hi, I'm Mark. You must be blank. Tell me a little bit about yourself, right? Starting off on the right foot and getting to know the person. So it's really, not much different than, I guess, sitting down and having a cup of coffee with somebody, right? Just getting to know them a little bit and creating that space where they feel comfortable or can feel comfortable to start to share about what they want, to start to share what their goals are. And then in that process, covering different sort of areas of a person's life, finding out, who are the important people in your life and what are the things that you're passionate about. When you're at home, what do you enjoy spending your time doing? And, what are your goals? What do if you could see yourself a year from now, what would that look like? What's the difference for you between using some of the person-centered and some of the PCT tools, right? What are some of your rituals and routines? What are the things that are important to make a good day for you, and what can turn out to make for a bad day for you, right? So it's really just a very sort of loose and comfortable way to get, for me professionally, to get a read on kind of where someone's at and what their situation is, and to learn a little bit. So in the back of my mind, I'm processing, okay, what kind of tools should we be using? Are there certain people that I need to talk to? Is there background that we need to get? Is there research that we need to do? Are there ways that we need to, sort of build the conversations differently? All of that stuff is hovering in the background, but what's on the surface is just a conversation between a couple of people who are just getting to know each other and just learning about each other. And I think affording the space for that person to ask the questions, what kind of questions do you have for me? I don't know how else to describe it, but it's almost like a little speed date, right? You just kind of doing a little bit of back and forth, and then figuring out what can work and how it can work best for that person to continue that relationship. So that when it comes time to have sometimes those harder discussions and ask those difficult questions, that level of comfort is there, and that you're building that trust, right? That for me, it is about that trust, that person knows that I'm asking the question because I want to learn about you, not because I want you to feel like you're being interrogated or like you need to answer to something or somebody, that it is simply about, for me, curiosity of what your answer is going to be, and how we can take that answer and yes and it, right? How can we build on what that answer is?
Thanks.
Yeah.
I can imagine too that sometimes that process is longer for some people than others too. That it
Yes.
takes
Oh,
longer
yeah.
to build trust, or it might take more than one meeting, or it
Definitely.
just is. It's again, it's not one size fits all.
Exactly.
Mark, is it also fair to say that that discovery meeting, that time that you do sort of in preparation and first meeting the individual and talking to them, is just also sort of what helps draw them out, or what, helps them be comfortable, so that when you get into the actual person-centered planning meeting with other people that are there, then they are, that helps you facilitate, as well as helps that person be comfortable in that situation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to use Jean's plan as an example. So I co-facilitated with my coworker Allison when we did Jean's first plan, and Allison did the discovery. So I didn't know Jean. I was there as the graphic facilitator, and I hadn't met Jean yet. So we got there early so that we could introduce ourselves a little bit. And I remember that in the conversation that Allison and I had, she shared with me some of the things that that Jean may or may not be comfortable with. And had she not had that knowledge, it would have set me up for failure in that facilitation. And I remember I actually used this in conversations and trainings that I've done in the past. I remember distinctly a moment when I found myself asking Jean a question, and it seemed like she didn't want to answer. And I walked across the room and I sat down on the floor in front of her chair. And I quietly addressed her and said, let's just pretend that nobody else is in the room. And I asked her the question, and she answered me. And I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not known the situation in that room, that she wasn't really comfortable talking about that in front of 20 people, but she was okay if I broke it down and I put myself in a vulnerable position and helped her understand that it was her choice and she was in control. And I sat down on the floor in front of her and opened myself up to her in that conversation, right? And whether she realized it or not, she was sitting above me in a chair. She was in control of that situation. And I like to believe that helped her to understand the power she had in that conversation to answer or not answer. And that actually made her comfortable answering. And I would have never done that, and I would have never known that had Allison not done a great job spending time with Jean and learning about Jean and understanding her ahead of time. You have to do that. You've got to get to know the person. We ask questions that are intimate and that are people that are hard to answer and that people hold very, very close. And if you don't know me, why would you want to answer that question? Right? Like, there's just some things you won't talk about to a stranger. I don't want to be a stranger when I step into the room to facilitate a plan. I want to be someone that you're excited to see and someone that you're wanting to share time with, because you know that I'm there to listen to you and I'm there to help other people listen to you, right? So it's really, really important. It looks like there's a question in the chat. I can see the beginning of it. I'm wondering if you had any facilitation experiences with students or individuals with extensive communication needs who have difficulty expressing themselves. Yes. In those times, it is important as a facilitator to count on the people that know the person best. So one of the tools that we use from PCT is communication chart, where we identify, okay, when this happens, here's what I do, here's what we think it means, and here's how we should respond or support the person, right? So we use tools like that, but we also count on the ability to, look at a parent and say, there are intrinsic things that every parent knows that other people just don't know. You can tell, right? You can tell when your daughter's happy. You can tell when your son is mad. And you can see that glint or that look in their eye, and you can help that person communicate. And so it's really about using that network of supports and those closest people around and with those folks to help that communication come to life and to generate a good understanding of what that person is telling us. Even if they can't verbally say it, they are communicating to us, and it's just a different way of listening. Can we share the communication tool with everyone too? Yeah, we can take, and Mary, if you want me to send that PCT tool with the PowerPoint slides or whatever, and you want to share it, I can certainly do that.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, we just really want to thank you, Mark, for staying with us during this extra time and sharing your experience. And just, it's so wonderful when it's so fresh in your mind because you're doing it, right? You just came from it, and then it's so much more real to get information when it's so fresh in your mind too. So that's awesome. Thank you so much.